let's go here. All right, so as I always start, please note that the views expressed here are mine and mine alone. They are not the views of Chabad of Arizona or Smile on Seniors. Samaritan, member of a community of Jews now nearly extinct that claims to be related by blood to those of ancient Samaria, who were not deported by the Assyrian conquerors of the kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE. The Samaritans call themselves Bnei Israel, children of Israel, or Shamrim, observant ones. For their sole norm of religious observance is the Pentateuch, the 5 books of the Old Testament. Other Jews call them simply Shomronim. In the Talmud, they are called Kutim, suggesting that they are rather descendants of Mesopotamian Kuthanians who settled in Samaria after the Assyrian conquest. The history of the Samaritans. Upon hearing the name Samaritans, many people are immediately reminded of the famous from the Gospel of Luke, the so-called Good Samaritan parable. Jesus tells us of a Levite who is beaten and left on the side of the road. None who passed the injured man stopped to help, save a Samaritan. This parable was originally meant to highlight the fact that even when 2 groups of people disapprove of each other, as did the Jews and the Samaritans, a single person from one group can still show kindness towards a member of the other. Many people who know this parable or the term Good Samaritan are unaware of who the Samaritans really are. In actuality, the Samaritans are a unique people whose history can be traced to biblical times. They are not considered ethnically Jewish or Arab, despite the fact that the Samaritans have lived in close proximity to both groups for thousands of years. Though they used to be numerous, there are now only about 780 Samaritans left, divided between 2 towns near Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They rarely marry non-Samaritans, and their religious practices are distinct from all Jewish sects. Their ability to remain both seemingly genetically and culturally isolated in one of the most diverse regions on earth has piqued the interest of both geneticists and historians, who have spent years trying to understand this unique group of people tucked away in the Levantine desert. Today, I welcome you all to a discussion of the documentary Lone Samaritan. We have a special guest with us today who has studied the sect and will be available for Q&A. Ray Zuckerman is a Phoenix resident who visited the Samaritans as well as studying them. We look forward to your personal touch and discussion of the attitude of the people. And now the trailer. Have we got sound?
Not yet. Definitely not on our part.
And, share the sound. You got sound now?
Not yet.
Oh, come on. Hold on a second. Let me speak for you a second. Sorry. Right? Where am I?
No, that worked the second time you fixed it, so now you can go play it.
You got it?
You got it.
Mission tel na siya kung siya mo.
אם היו שואלים אותך עכשיו, נגיד העדה מוכנה לסלוח, אוקיי? תחשבי, משהו אחר לגמרי.
כן.
העדה מוכנה לסלוח, הכל בסדר, יש שלום. היית מוכנה לחזור לשם?
Okay, I'm going to welcome back Ray now. And let me just put this on mute. Welcome back, Ray. Ray, as someone who has visited and studied the sect, can you give us your overall view of them? Do you have a presentation if you want to share your screen?
I did, but somehow this screen is interfering with my presentation, so I can't find it. It's really not terribly important for what we're doing. We're going to talk about the people and basically our visit to their village just outside of Nablus. And I mean, just outside, it's walking distance, I think, maybe a long walk, but walking distance to Nablus. We did not visit the folks in Holon, which is right outside of Tel Aviv. So they have two very, very distinct communities. What we did is we left from Jerusalem and we headed up toward Mount Gerizim, which is 50 or 60 miles. I mean, it's quite a ride. It's not through really friendly neighborhoods. They're it's all in the West Bank, and Nablus again is not a real friendly place. I didn't quite realize how interesting it was in terms of the friendliness of the neighbors. I think I might have been a little bit more nervous, but we did arrive, and it's a very, very small community. It's a couple of streets with a number of houses in it, and these are the people that primarily work in Nablus. The community, as we talked about, is really split between Holon and Mount Gerizim. The folks in Mount Gerizim are pretty much all work for the Palestinian Authority, primarily as accountants or administrative folks. The ones in Holon are much more integrated into Israeli society in their jobs. But again, they tend to be government jobs, but they have much more freedom. They serve in the army. and are generally consider themselves Israelis. They have Israeli citizenship, as compared to the ones that live on Mount Gerizim, which do not have Israeli citizenship.
You mentioned that they're accountants. Where do they study or qualify to become accountants? Do they go to regular universities or what?
I do not have the answer to that question. I'm relating what the priest told us. But they seem to be in semi-skilled or skilled professions. Let me kind of get back and talk a little bit about the Samaritans themselves. They live in a very, very precarious, excuse me a moment. Situation. They're living between two worlds. The Palestinians and the Israelis are very, very different groups, of course, with different loyalties, goals, objectives that we all understand. So the Samaritans consider themselves Jews. I have some notes on that very quickly. They believe that they were introduced into the Torah by I'm just trying to find the name here quickly. I underlined it by Pinchas, and looked very, very much like their practices. They consider the original practices of Jews, and they feel that the rest of us have gone astray. They can't say that out loud. They're probably one of the most persecuted sects possibly in the world. They were hundreds of thousands at one time, and now we're talking about hundreds of people that are split between two communities, and they're holding on to and maintaining beliefs that go back thousands, as you had so eloquently said, Izzy. They go back thousands of years. Right now, their process is survival. They're trying to save their community. They're trying to save their way of life. When we walked into the town and we started to walk, they gave us a tour to their museum. They opened their Torah, their scroll, which is written in ancient Hebrew. Everything they do in terms of religious practices is written in ancient Hebrew. That means the script is different. The Torah is very, very similar to ours, but there are differences, which the scholars can illuminate. I can't. But they do have one scroll, which is now deeply hidden because two of their scrolls were stolen looking for this particularly well-hidden scroll that was stole. Well, the well-hidden scroll is still hidden, but two of their scrolls were stolen, and they originally asked $7 million for the return of the scrolls. The price went up to $12 million. The priest told us, we don't have 12 million cents to pay for it, let alone $12 million. So they have really no hope of recovering these scrolls. They read them the way Sephardim read, with the scrolls vertical and open in front of them. their priesthood is Kohanim that are who get the position by being the oldest living Kohen at the time. I think the gentleman that was speaking to us was second or third in line, and he wasn't a young fella. So they're really, their goal is surviving, and they're surviving between two worlds. They can't call themselves Jews, or we get angry with them. They can't call themselves Palestinians, or because they consider them Jews. So they don't integrate into either society very well, or at least their feelings and the way they look at themselves can't be openly discussed. When they discussed it with us, they talked about it in the third person. This is the way these people look at us. This is the way the Jews look at us. They do serve in the army. They do have Israeli citizenship. On the other hand, they were invited and attended the funeral of King Hussein. Oh, here it is. So the one Torah that they have was written by the great grandson of Aaron, Moses' brother. They pray in ancient Hebrew, and we were invited into the synagogue to their prayer, but I felt very uncomfortable praying with a group that basically considered themselves Jews. They do pray very much like the Arabs on rugs. They did not have chairs in the synagogue. It was, everybody had a small rug that they prayed on, which you could see from outside the synagogue. So blah, 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 blah.
Can I just in Rabbi Levi at this moment? Levi, we had a discussion. Are they Jews?
Are they Jews?
Yeah.
Right. Actually, Ray and I had a discussion many years ago when his office was downtown, that what we've found, at least in the text that I've read, is they're for sure not considered Jews. That's an easy answer. In other words, even in this, if you follow the movie, the star, Sophie Tzdaka, she converts to Judaism afterwards. So clearly Israel, the rabbinate, doesn't consider them Jews either. The question is, why not? If they've been in Israel so long, who are they? And one of the theories that we read was after the Jews were expelled, they were exiled from the land of Israel, people moved into those homes. Right? You have empty homes, people move in, and then the Jews come back and they say, oh, no, we were the original Jews and we've been here all along. And that's one of the theories of who they are. In fact, they had worshipped some form of an idol, like a dove bird, which gave it away to many of the Jews, but they definitely took on a lot of the customs. That's what we had found in our little research. I did not do extensive research on that, but maybe Ray has some more info on that part.
Again, this is an area that they're just not going to talk about in the first person. This is, it is extremely difficult for them walking that line. If they claim they're Jews, then they're in trouble in Har Gerizim. So they just won't really fess up to it, so to speak. But they, my suspicion is that they can consider themselves Jews, and the rest of us have missed the boat. They're still, their calendar's a little bit different. So very often during Pesach, when the calendars don't match up, you can you have the opportunity to go there and actually watch the sacrifices, and you see some of that in some of the videos online, or some of the or some sections of the movie. you see that they suspend the goat off two poles and slaughter the animal, and then they roast it in fire off these very large poles. So it's extremely interesting. The pits that they roast these in are huge. Well, when I say huge, 2-meter holes in essentially in the concrete with a grating over them, and the fire comes up through the grating and roasts the animal. And you saw in the preview, you saw the ability to see how they started to pass the sacrifice around the members of the group.
Ray, can I just mention something about that sacrifice, the burnt offering? When I learned about an offering or a sacrifice, to me it sounded like it should be a sacred ceremony. When I watch the Samaritans, it looks to me like it's a carnival. It looks to me they let the goats loose in their center of the town. They run after them, they catch them, they slaughter them and barbecue them. So it just seems very barbaric to me. That particular, I can't say that I've witnessed the sacrifice, but what I have a picture in the mind. Levi, you can chime in as well.
Well, the sacrifices are barbaric by what we're accustomed to today. They were not pretty. Draining the blood out of an animal through its throat while it's suspended by its hind legs is not what most of us are comfortable watching.
Right.
You know, there's certain portions of the animal which go to the Kohanim, and other portions are distributed to the crowd. And I imagine that it may not be very different from what actually occurred at the time. These things aren't like super organized. Our prayers, our liturgy came much, much later. When we get together and there's food to be had, and we're kind of waiting for the holiday and nothing is happening, people get hungry and they're milling about. And bear in mind, you're looking at pretty much half the population when you see these images. It seemed very, very similar to what I saw on the reenactment at Bunker Hill in the United States. They're all, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. They're all running around. Where do I sit? What's my position? Where am I going? When are we gathering together? It was kind of disorganized, very, very realistic. I think what we see there with the animals running around is also very, very realistic. These animals are very comfortable walking around the people. They're seeing them there, and they're there on a regular basis. This is not only gathered for the sacrifice. They live there. This is the way we lived when we were living in tents in the desert. The animals were there. We had shepherds. We had people dealing with them. To me, it seemed very, very realistic, although some of the things that we watched were not super pleasant to our eyes, where we lived with beautiful homes and, clean walls and, no tents. So the sense of it, I get just an overwhelming sense. We'd like to have you. We want the tourism. We want the people. We're glad to talk to you about our history and what we've done and how we learned it. But we're not going to talk about our position, because we live in two different worlds. And the only time they really get together is on Pesach.
Ray, I think you mentioned, I think people will be interested. You said that they charge tickets to observe.
I think they do. I think actually I saw that on a Google ad. That wasn't what we were addressing. My
No,
son,
I know. I'm saying, but like in the sense of the tourism part of that.
yes, there is they do have they do have a modest fee involved.
I want to add to what you mentioned, and because we're so close to Pesach, I think Ray is definitely correct. In others, we see the beautiful side of a lot of Jewish parts, in the sense of it's what we don't see what goes on behind the scenes. But before Pesach, there's actually a custom by most Jewish people, and I have this custom as well. Before the Seder, at the evening service, you actually read the passage about the Passover sacrifice. And it's obviously the process. I wouldn't say it looks anything like what we see in the Lone Samaritan movie, but it's definitely the sacrifice, which includes all of the draining of the blood, which makes something kosher. We can't consume blood. It's one of the Torah's commandments. But in addition to that, there is actually, with the Passover sacrifice, we talk about in the ethics of our forefathers, the Pirkei Avot, how one of the miracles of the temple was that you never found a fly, right? Why is that a miracle? Because if you understood what's going on, this picture from the movie definitely gives a good sort of visual of how many animals are there and what they're doing. You would assume there would be a lot of flies. So I think as much as we don't like how it looks, it's definitely something that happens in Jewish tradition, the sacrificing and the slaughtering. But I will share one thing I think I mentioned to you, Izzy. I read a really good quote. In the olden days, let's talk about 1,000, 2,000 years ago, let's talk about 2,000 years ago, most civilizations were offering sacrifices. So that was very normal to them. And therefore, it didn't turn them off when the Jews did it. However, what did turn them off from the Jews? We cared about our elderly. We cared about those that were sick, right? Just because a person had, I'm going to use autism as an example in those days, we didn't dismiss them. We took care of them. We took care of the infirm. And for the other societies, that was like, why would you do that? That has flipped. Now everyone takes care of the elderly, the infirm, those who are sick, and sacrifices like, why would the Jews do that, right? There's a movement, veganism and vegetarianism. So I think that's just something to add to your thought process, where the visual sort of doesn't strike you in a good way.
I have one more question before we open up for Q&A. Do they observe traditional Jewish holidays? Like I know Pesach is observed, but Yom Kippur, Sukkot, they build a sukkah inside the house. But do they observe Rosh Hashanah, Shmini Atzeret, and all those kind of holidays?
Well, I think probably the ones that were initiated after Pinchas. I don't know, but my guess is that they did not do not observe those. But you're right; they do build a sukkah actually inside the house, highly decorated. The mezuzah goes above the door, not on the doorpost as we do it when they have room. Let me see. You did such a fine presentation introducing me that I have to kind of jump around from my notes, which is wonderful. Sorry. No, nothing to apologize for. The thing that, aside from the character and this very, very fine line that they walk, trying to maintain their traditions against enormous pressure from both the Jews and the Palestinians, and nobody says they're ours. They're fighting an uphill battle. The young people, as they get educated, as they learn more secular materials, find it very attractive to move outside of their traditions. So they're having a hard time. At one point, they didn't let anyone marry outside. Then they agreed to let men marry outside if the women agreed to convert, but they have not extended that to women at this point in time, to my knowledge. They struggle.
Ray, I know that you have another appointment, so I would like to first of all thank you, and I'd like to open up the floor for any questions. If you have any questions for Ray, just unmute your microphone.
I have a question about their praying. You said they pray on rugs like the Muslims. Does that mean that they kneel?
Yes,
Yes.
they kneel and bow.
Do the two communities get along with each other?
In Cholon and Har Gerizim, as near as I can tell, they get along fine. They're part of the same community, but in their daily lives, they do not regularly interact because they're living in very, very different worlds.
So when they say there's 900 families about, they're including both communities, correct?
Yes.
I think there's less. I read there's about 780 people. No, people, not family, people.
Oh, interesting.
700. We looked at that number. I think it varies a little bit from time to time.
Yeah.
But it's an extremely small community. They have tremendous, I mean, look at what we do for our education of our children. You know, how many schools we have, how many teachers we have. They have to do this all with an incredibly, incredibly small population. Imagine a Jewish community that had 350 people surrounded by hostile neighbors on both sides. I shouldn't say enemies. And being not trusted by either group.
I was just curious about the fact that I didn't see any women participating in anything.
Well, Judaism is a society that the obligations of prayer and mitzvot falls upon the men, and we treat from a religious point of view, from an observant point of view, we treat women differently than we treat men. We recognize that there is a difference, and there are different obligations and different requirements, and that's the tradition that we read in the Torah, and that's the tradition that these people follow quite strictly.
That's by the way, that's a question to unpack for an entirely different conversation. But I would not say that women do not have a role in prayer. I would say different roles. And that maybe that will be one day a good discussion for my mother-in-law to bring her back on. And actually we should do that. We should plan that for April. I'm going to speak to her. The role, yeah, that's a good conversation for her.
Do the chat.
Ray, there's a question that came up in the chat. Are they persecuted, or are the young people just choosing over time to leave the community and join mainstream Jewish Israel?
Well, that pressure is certainly there. It's much more pleasant to be part of the majority than part of the minority, and the traditions that they are following are go down to very basic Jewish traditions to a great extent, and it's a difficult life. It's the services. You can't be like a little bit Palestinian, Samaritan. I mean, you're either part of their community or you're not. It's not, you know, we look in the United States and there are people that can't read a word of Hebrew that consider themselves Jewish. You can't do that in that society. You're either in or you're out. And they're pretty serious about that. Again, this is an impression I get from dealing with the people that were there. It was very, very small percentage of the population. But as small as the population is, it's hard to believe that they're anything else. Otherwise, they would not be able to educate their young at all and maintain survivability of the community.
Ask the next question.
The next one, there's another. Dell asked, do the Samaritans celebrate Purim? I'm sure they do.
I do not know.
I would assume they don't. Because they are, one of the things, I mean, this will be for maybe after Ray signs off, just to go into more in depth on this, but they do not believe in rabbinic Judaism. Purim is a rabbinic holiday. So I would assume they do not. There's some more questions in the chat.
Ray, I have a question. What made you so interested to find out more about them?
Well, since 2/3 of my children moved to Israel, I spent quite a bit of time in Israel. And among other things that my children did, my daughter was a registered tour guide, and a phenomenal tour guide at that. And we visited quite a bit of interesting places in Israel. Some of them like this. At my daughter's wedding, we went to Gaza when it was still part of Israel, and I don't know how to describe it. We rented a van with a security guard in it, and he spent a good deal of the time getting to where we were going, getting directions. And frankly, when we got passed by a man on a camel, I started to get a little bit nervous. So, but we did tour incredible spots in Israel. Israel is actually a very, very beautiful country. You know, it's not all the Dead Sea, and it's not all Tel Aviv. There are beautiful mountains and valleys and just wonderful places. And we camped out over a good portion of Israel, from north to south. And we always went touring. The Har Gerizim was one of the really unique things that we did. But the other area that I always counsel people to see is to see the city of David outside the temple, where you can actually see the steps where they walk from the mikveh all the way up to the temple, which those steps I think now are almost completely excavated, where they had, I'm getting off topic, but where they had the sewers where we hid from, I think it was the Romans, and they had, and you'll see holes in the sewers where the Romans were running their spears through the sewers to see if they could find a Jew hidden in them.
So Ray, there's one more question. Do they attend Israeli schools? If not, do they build their own schools and provide their own teachers?
Well, that's why you're not going to get a chance.
I really don't know the answer to that question. I would presume they attend the Israeli schools because they are very, very much integrated into Israeli society in Holon. They're just outside of Tel Aviv. They're serving in the army. Without attending the Israeli schools, they would be at an enormous disadvantage. And as you see in the movie and some of the clips, they were very, very comfortable speaking Hebrew. They did not. It was their natural language to speak. Their study for prayer has to be in addition to what they get inside the Israeli schools. But other than the fact that the customs are somewhat different and the script is somewhat different, the language structure, the things that they're doing is very, very similar to what they learn in Hebrew. So it's not a big transition for them to pick up their customs from their family the way all of us do, and maintain their traditions and still study in the Israeli schools.
One more question. What language do the Samaritans speak?
Hebrew.
Is it Hebrew as we know it, or is it an Aramaic Hebrew or
it is not an area I have knowledge in, but they were certainly comfortable speaking both English and Hebrew. They certainly didn't. I didn't sense a difference in accent in their Hebrew from the people in our group. Perhaps theirs was a bit better than ours, but clearly fluid in Hebrew and very, very comfortable in the language.
Okay. You know, picking this movie, it's an off-the-wall movie. It was not easy for me to do research and find a lot of information. Ray, I really, really want to thank you. Your insight is much broader than what I found. And I think we've all learned a lot of what the Samaritans are. And thank you very, very much. Are there any other questions anyone would like to ask?
I just had one.
Guys.
I had one where the father said that he would kill his daughter if she married out. It was almost like an honor killing type of thing, which I found a little disturbing.
Well, I think when someone talks about killing their daughter, I think we all find that disturbing. But again, these people are living in fear. They're losing one person is a big deal to them. It's extremely important for them to save their culture, and they understand that this is a fight for survival. So what people will actually do, I can't speak to, but certainly understanding the fear that these people have in terms of their surroundings, in terms of a culture that goes back thousands of years, and there's a handful of them left. And they fought so long to maintain that culture after being a major force in that part of the world. It is a tough burden to carry.
But they are allowing the sons to marry out if the wife converts, but they won't allow the daughters to do that.
Not as of the last look that I have seen. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
No.
Issy, what did you think about the movie per se?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Yes. What did you think about the movie? That's how we're here.
It opened my mind to do the research on who the Samaritans are, and which is what, all the questions to me, they're like the Torah scrolls, the praying on the rug. And when I discussed it a couple of weeks ago with Rabbi Levi, he said, well, they're not Jewish, but they follow a lot of our traditions. I found the Torah scrolls very interesting because not only do they read them upright, most of them have 3 trees or pillars, whatever you call them, and they're enclosed in what I term like a Megillah case, more so in what we're used to, like rolling it up, rolling the parchment up. you know, it's just one of the out of the ordinary movies, as far as I'm concerned.
Did it bring back any memories of other movies we've seen?
Sorry, repeat that again.
Did it bring back any memories of other movies we've seen? How about One of Us, where the young woman
Yes.
bolts out of
Yes.
New York to Paris?
Yeah, One of Us. It's happening the same thing. Yeah.
The thing that bothered me, Izzy, was the father was ostracized by the community. And it was not his fault that his daughters left.
Right.
You know,
I don't know.
the son remained to carry on the legacy. I mean, you know, why should he be ostracized? Why should he be shunned?
Because he didn't raise his daughters properly.
No. Well, if you remember in the movie, he asked that question of the chief rabbi, whoever he was, the elder, and he said, if your daughter or son has left the sect, that means that you have not educated them properly, and therefore you're at fault. That was the answer that was given.
Yeah, but they accused him of stealing the Torah scrolls.
You know what? Once you ostracize someone, you can fake news. You can do whatever you like.
Yeah, well, the sad part is that he really still wanted to belong.
Right.
And
Right.
you see him at the Passover sacrifice where no one talks to him. No one comes
Right.
up to him. It's just like he is an alien.
That's exactly the interesting thing is they still allowed him to congregate with the people. They didn't get their security to get rid of him, but nobody talked to him. Nobody said a word to him. And
He was invisible.
I think that
Yeah, he's invisible, exactly.
I don't even think they allowed him into their synagogue to pray, if you ask me.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Does the Israeli government
Okay.
Let me thank you for allowing me to share my views. This was certainly interesting. I enjoyed sharing them. I wish I was as well organized as Izzy was, but it was great pleasure to speak before you. And if you have any questions for me at another time, just please feel to write me. Izzy will give you my email address. And at this point in time, I have to leave. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Ray, thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful Pesach. Okay. Now we got that out of the way. Are there any other questions? I do have some more pictures that I found of the Torah scrolls and whatever it is. If you're interested in seeing that, I can share the screen. And then I also wanted to know if anyone wanted to discuss anything about the Phoenix Jewish Film Festival that just finished, because since the last meeting that we had and this meeting, having to do the research for this Lone Samaritan, having to watch 30 movies because Pinky demanded it of me, most of them I slept through, the time was very short. So if anyone wants to discuss that, I'm open. As far as the next movie that I've chosen, I will send you all an email. You'll get it. The name of the movie is called The Grizzlies. It's got nothing to do with National Geographic or grizzly bears in Yellowstone or Montana or Alaska. It's a very, very, very good movie called The Grizzly, but I will send that in an email as soon as we're done over here. So it's up to you what you would like to do. Just Q&A? You want to discuss the film festival?
I think
You
you
want me
should
to show you
share
some
some of
more?
those pictures. Share some of those pictures.
You want me to share some of the pictures? Okay, hold on. Okay, so let's go here. Let's do a slideshow from the current slide. And then space settings, swap the display. Let's get this smaller. Hold on a second. I've closed my PowerPoint, so that made things a little different. All right, now let's share screen number 1. Okay, so when you see the map there on the side, it shows you the area where they are, and let's get this over here. I'm not going to give you commentary with this. Okay, where's the next slide? Okay, so this is what I found interesting with the scrolls. In the top pictures, you can see the 3 trees. In the bottom left, you can see the Hebrew writing of our traditional Torah as against the Samaritan Torah. So
it's very different.
Very, very different.
The writing might be different, but maybe the meaning is the same. You have to have
Can't answer that.
Right.
And then this is some pictures of them doing the sacrifice in that pit over there. and if you want, this is Sophie Tzdaka. So she was the daughter that left.
Oh, she's real.
It's very real. She is
very pretty.
She's 36 years old. She left the Samaritans. She converted to Judaism at the age of 18. And she is an entertainer. She's a singer. She's an actress. What else have I got here?
Did she convert because
real? She is definitely real. You can actually look her up.
Did she convert because she fell in love with the?
Yeah, she married a Jewish man, and she converted. And when she went back to see her father, she was already converted to Judaism. So that's.
And she actually tried to convince him that being part of the Samaritans weren't good because they didn't accept him. She was arguing that he should leave, but he wouldn't.
Right.
Wow.
So that's what I have.
I thought the group was very cruel in what they did. And if they want to have more members, well, they think that that's the way that they would enforce their membership. People would be afraid to leave. But
I think that's pretty much true of any sect. You know, if you look at Christianity, if you try to convert from a Protestant to a Roman Catholic or whatever they have, they also ostracize you from one part or the other. That other movie, One of Us, even in Chabad, if you leave, they're not as stringent, but I don't think they make it as easy to come back.
Well,
why do you say that?
I don't know. It's just
I don't know anyone that had an issue coming back.
And they don't exercise the family.
Not at all.
They shunned the
In
person.
fact, Izzy, I'll share a story. A lady went hiking on Squaw Peak. This is probably like 10 years ago. I had just moved back to Phoenix. She was married to an African American, a black man. She grew up Chabad. Her family maybe stopped talking to her. That's a different conversation. But she saw a menorah from the mountain, went to the shul. My dad invited her for Shabbos dinner. She would come every Friday night with her husband and her, I think they had a child then. They moved back to New York, and they're part of the community, whatever that means, meaning I don't know what she went back to, how much she is observing or not. But the point is I don't think it's difficult at all.
Okay.
I think people welcome, hopefully. There's a line I saw with the prince and princess, right? Or are they not a princess, with Meghan and Harry, right? Someone said, hopefully their family is forgiving and they can come back. Well, I don't know. But I think it's with every family. If your son, or you have 3 children, for Izzy or for others, crossed you, yeah, you'll accept them, but it might take a little, there might be an ice period in the middle, right? You got to get over the hurt.
Well, let me just tell you this one story. Our nephew, who lives in California, married a Korean girl. I don't know whether she converted or not. They had a son, and they showed us pictures of the bris that they had for the firstborn son. And it was done by Chabad. And we said, really? And they and our nephew said that the Chabad said to us, you never know what's going to happen. And 13 years later, we celebrated his bar mitzvah.
She must have converted.
No.
I don't know. We don't know.
She had not converted at the time of the bris. That we know.
Yeah, well, we don't know whether she had, but she insisted on him going to Hebrew school, and he did a beautiful ceremony, and it was really surreal. Interesting.
I had an experience maybe 45 years ago with a group of friends, got together all the time and discussed all kinds of topics. And this particular time, it was our children and what they would do if one of them intermarried or expressed interest in intermarrying. Now, this group was all raised, we were all more of a traditional setting. We're not Orthodox, a little stronger than conservative. Every one of them said they would disown their child and set Shiva, except me. I said, it's not worth losing a child over. I have very strong beliefs. They're being educated in Judaism. They're going to be bar and bat mitzvah. But to say that they're no longer here and sit Shiva for your child, that's cruel. And yet I understand. And I worked in a yeshiva where one of the Orthodox girls married out of the religion and they didn't disown her. So it's really a tough thing to swallow.
I think that I've heard that if you look back through Jewish history, that was, I think, common, that families would just sit Shiva after a family left the faith or left a marriage. I don't think that's not a Jewish law. That's just people on their own doing something.
Right.
So right. I would never tell someone. I would tell someone they're crazy. Right? If you're gonna do that, they're never gonna love you. You're never gonna have anything. I learned a beautiful line. I think I've shared this here for another discussion, but there's a rabbi in Australia who sends out a beautiful email every week. It's a question and an answer. A question to the rabbi, and he answers it. And somebody had asked him about interfaith marriages, and he said, "Why would you push your child away?" So they did one thing wrong, let's say, right? There's 613 commandments. Let's say they're not doing one of the 613. There's another 612. So why are you pushing away for all the other ones? But I think really what you're hearing is just the hurt from people more than the sane, rational thinking on it. So I think that's really how to view that. I don't have an answer for you on why people react like that, but I just say it's nothing new. That's what I say.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Well, the idea would be inclusive, not exclusive. Sometimes a child can intermarry and the partner then comes into the fold. You hope that by welcoming them, they would join you rather than exclude them completely, and then there's no hope for them to be.
Right. I think that in general, that's a conversation that each family has differently and kind of reacts differently because of how it strikes them and the nerves and the raw nerves involved. And it's obviously never it's never one size fits all. But to sit Shiva is definitely extreme and not proper. I think, Izzy, that's connected to like the unorthodox conversation, right? You look at what they did to get this, or what they were going to do, and what lengths they went to get this girl back.
Right.
May I share a personal experience? This is at Al in Atlanta. My son converted to Episcopalianism, and it hurt me a lot just because of the chain broken and all those thousands of years of Jewish history that it should end with my son. But I love him to death. We're very close, and he always takes the moral high ground. He's a very good man, and he always turns up for Passover.
Look.
Yeah, this is the movie for next month, The Grizzlies.
Yep.
And
Grizzlies.
What is it?
Grizzlies.
The Grizzlies. It's on Netflix.
Now, is that on net? Oh, is that Netflix? I see.
It's on
Okay.
Netflix.
So Izzy is moving away from
This
the
one-
tough topics.
Hold on a second. This one, Welcome to Kutchers. Should bring back
We have seen it.
And I've been there.
Yeah, we have seen it. We have been there. And Stanley wrote down jokes from the movie.
Okay. And yeah, it was fun to watch. It was really fun to watch. And
Is
the
that
Prime
all-
Minister,
Oh, that's
for
on
this movie,
Amazon.
the Prime Minister was very good. Okay, so there we are. I'm done.
Well, I